They said the mill was dead, but when the wind blew in from the river, you could still hear the looms turning, slow and steady, like a heart that refused to stop beating. I didn't believe in ghosts back then, not really. I believed in grief, in debt, in the way a small town looks at a widow like she's half a curse herself. When Thomas died in the gears, God, I still hear it sometimes. The whole of Redbridge went silent. The mill shut down that same night. 16 looms jammed all at once. The foreman swore he saw Thomas's lantern swinging in the dark, long after they dragged what was left of him out. That was 3 months ago. And now I was the one with the keys. My name's Eleanor Grady, though folks mostly called me the widow now. They always said it like a title, not a name. Thomas had left me the mill in his will. Small mercy from a man who'd loved the place more than he ever loved sleep or family. But a building that size doesn't stay quiet, not in Redbridge. The men said it was cursed, the women said it was sad. The truth, I think, was somewhere between. The morning I reopened it, fog sat thick on the river. It clung to the windows and to my throat. The old machinery stood like skeletons in the dark, brass bones and iron teeth. Dust made every breath taste like old cotton. When I turned the main valve, the belts creaked awake, like something old remembering pain, and then I heard it. The loom on line 3, click. Whir, click. I thought it was just air pressure or leftover tension in the line until the rhythm changed. It wasn't mechanical. It was deliberate, slow, like a message. Click, click, pause, click. 3 beats, stop, 3 beats again. Thomas had a habit he used to tap the kitchen table like that when he was thinking. Always 3 times. That's when I dropped the wrench. The second night, I brought a lamp. Not the kerosene kind Thomas used. Mine was electric, buzzing faintly with that new city current. Redbridge had only just wired up Main Street, and even then, the light felt wrong in the mill. Too sharp, too modern for such an old wound. The floorboards sighed under my boots as I walked down the aisle between the looms. The fog had crept in through the broken window panes again, curling between the belts like pale fingers. The smell of oil and old thread hung heavy. That's when I heard it again. Click, click. Pause, click. Line 3. Always line 3. I set the lamp down and leaned close. The shuttle was moving, sliding back and forth, though the loom wasn't connected to any power. My breath caught. The motion was smooth, almost graceful, like invisible hands were weaving something only they could see. I reached out stupid. I know to touch the frame, and the loom stopped dead. The silence afterward was louder than any noise. I stood there for what felt like a full minute, waiting, listening, and then I saw it. A thread, thin as a hair, bright white. It wasn't cotton or silk, looked almost alive. It trembled between the needles like it was breathing. I followed it with my eyes, tracing it across the floor, under the other machines, all the way toward the back office, Thomas's office. I told myself I wouldn't go in there again, but I did. The door creaked like a sigh. Everything was as he left it. The ledger open, half a glass of whiskey. The chair pushed back as if he'd stood up just before the accident. I remember thinking how unfair it was, how even ghosts seemed to keep their things neater than the living. The thread led straight to his desk. I followed it with trembling fingers, and that's when I saw the spool. One I'd never seen before. It wasn't from the mill, not one of ours. The wood was darker, polished and carved with strange grooves along the rim. I picked it up. Cold. Too cold for the room. And then the loom started again. Click. Whir. Click. My lamp flickered once, twice, then died. For a moment, I thought I saw movement in the reflection on the glass pane. A shape standing by the loom, a man-shaped shadow holding a lantern. But when I turned, there was nothing there. Only the steady creak of something old, still working. I left the spool on the desk and ran home, feeling like I'd carried something with me, not on my skin, but under it. That night I dreamed of threads. They were everywhere, winding around my wrists, my throat, my heart, pulling tight. And somewhere in the dark, a voice whispered, "You took my place, Eleanor." Morning came slow and gray, the kind of light that makes everything look already dead. I didn't sleep much. Sound of the loom kept replaying in my head, steady, patient, like it was waiting for me to answer. I made tea, but it tasted of iron. My hands shook so bad I nearly dropped the cup. That's when I saw it, a faint red line on my wrist, thin as a sewing thread curling beneath the skin. I rubbed it, thinking it was a scratch, but it didn't fade. It just pulsed once like a heartbeat. That's when the knocking started. 3 taps at the door. Pause. 3 again. I froze. That rhythm. Thomas's rhythm. When I opened the door, no one was there. It's only the fog, curling thick around the porch, whispering as it moved. Something small lay on the steps, a spool of thread. The same kind as before. Dark wood, carved in those strange grooves. I didn't pick it up. Couldn't. By noon, I convinced myself I was being foolish. Grief does things, the pastor said. Makes shadows look like shapes, noises sound like voices. Still, when I walked back to the mill that afternoon, I carried a Bible in one hand and a matchbox in the other. If something in there wanted to whisper, I'd give it something to choke on. The mill loomed over the river like a body left to rot. Its windows were the eyes of a skull, empty and waiting. The door swung open with the window resistance like it wanted me inside. The air felt colder than before. I could see my breath. I walked the floor slowly, boots echoing on the boards. Every machine stood silent, except for line 3. Click. Whir. Click. The sound came steady, pulsing in the air like a heartbeat. I moved closer. The spool I'd seen in the office was gone. In its place, a new spool sat in the cradle, unwinding that same pale thread. And the pattern on the cloth, if you could call it, that looked almost like letters. I leaned in. Yes. Words. My name. Eleanor. I stumbled back, heart hammering. The machine sped up, weaving faster, the shuttle clicking like teeth. Threads tangled on the floor, wrapping around my boots. I reached for the main valve, desperate to shut it off. And the moment I did, the loom stopped. And something whispered right behind me. You were supposed to burn it. I turned, but no one was there. Only the cold air pressing against my face and the faint smell of Whiskey Thomas's brand, the one that burned all the way down. The lamps flickered once, then steadied. And in that trembling light, I saw the thread again running across the floor. Under the door, down the hall, toward the old dye room. That room had been sealed since the accident. They said the gears caught fire, that Thomas fell trying to save a boy trapped in the machinery. But the official report never made sense. The scorch marks were wrong, stains too dark. I followed the thread to the door. The lock was still broken, rusted with years. It took both hands to pull it open. The smell hit me first, rot and smoke, and something sweet underneath. The room was blackened, every inch of it, but the center was clear. Someone had swept it clean. And in the middle of the floor sat a single lantern, lit and burning low. The same one from Thomas's locker, same one that was buried with him. I don't remember screaming. Only the sound of the flame flaring up, the air growing hot, the floorboards groaning like something beneath them had begun to wake. The air in the dye room shimmered with heat, though the lantern's flame was no bigger than a match head. I couldn't breathe without tasting smoke. My first thought was that I'd gone mad, that the grief had burned a hole clean through my mind. But then the floor groaned again, and something underneath it moved. The boards rose an inch, then settled. Dust fell from the ceiling. A low hum, like a breath drawn through iron lungs, filled the space. The lantern flickered, and I swear the flame leaned toward me like it recognized my face. Thomas came out as a whisper, half hope, half dread. The flame pulsed once, 3 times, then pause, then 3 again. That rhythm again. It's rhythm. The smell of whiskey filled the room. And then the voice came, soft and wrong. Eleanor, it wouldn't burn. My heart seized. I turned toward the sound, but there was no one there. Only the shadow, the flame cast across the wall. Except it wasn't mine. It was taller, broader. Thomas's shape unmistakable. The shadow lifted its arm, and the lantern flame grew, spilling light into the cracks of the floorboards. For the first time, I saw what lay beneath. Threads. Hundreds of them. White, black, red knotted together like veins, pulsing faintly with their own light. They ran deep into the floor, into the ground, spreading under every loom, every wall, like the mill itself had grown roots. The air vibrated, and the looms upstairs began to creak to life, one by one, though no power ran to them. The sound was deafening, an army of machines working in perfect, terrible rhythm. "You took my place," the voice whispered again. "It chose you. I didn't choose anything." I screamed back. My voice cracked. "You died, Thomas. The gears, not the gears." The hunger. The lantern flared bright, and for an instant, I saw it all, the fire that killed him. The flames curling backward away from the machines, drawn toward something else. Something in the pit beneath the dye vats. The men had said they saw light down there even after the fire was out. Now I knew why. I dropped to my knees and pressed my hand to the floor. It was hot. The threads beneath throbbed like veins under skin. I could feel a pulse, steady, slow, alive. Then, from somewhere deep below, a voice, not Thomas's this time, older, thicker. Like stone grinding rose up through the boards. "Feed it." The lantern shattered. The room went black. For a heartbeat there was nothing, just the sound of the river outside, the moaning of old wood. Then light bloomed again, dim and red this time, coming from the cracks in the floor. Fire, but not fire. It glowed without burning, liquid and alive, moving like molten thread. The boards beneath my feet began to char. I ran. Up the hall, past the looms, each of them now, weaving frantically, threads whipping through the air like whips. The machines weren't just running, they were screaming. Metal shrieked, belts snapped, shuttles flew from their cradles like bullets. The heat followed me up the stairs, down the corridor to the front door. When I burst outside, The air was cold and wet. Rain had begun to fall, but even the storm couldn't drown the sound of the mill roaring behind me. From the hill, I watched through the fog as every window filled with light red, pulsing heart-like. The building trembled, as if something inside was clawing its way out. And then silence. The lights went dark. The rain hissed against the roof. And just as I thought it was over, a single glow appeared in the top window. A lantern, swinging slow and steady. 3 beats, pause, 3 again. By dawn, the smoke had settled low over the river like a blanket, thick and wet. The mill stood quiet again, nothing but a hulking shape against the pale sky. But I knew it wasn't over. The silence felt wrong, like a mouth closed just before it bites. I should have left Redbridge that morning. Should have taken the train north, left the deeds, the debts, the ghosts. But grief is a trap made of love and guilt, and I was caught in both. So instead I went back. The front door hung crooked from its hinges. The smell of burnt oil clung to the air. Floorboards were slick under my boots. I thought it was water at first until I saw the color. Dark, thick. So much of it that it pooled. In the seams between the boards, blood, but not human. It shimmered faintly, like the dye Thomas used to mix for the crimson thread. The looms were still. Threads hung limp, their ends dipped in the blood-dark stain. For a moment I thought I heard whispering again, faint, like children breathing into glass. When I turned, I saw faces in the fogged window panes. Small, pale faces. The children of the mill workers. The ones who went missing that winter before the fire. I stumbled backward, my stomach turning to ice. I took them first, a voice said. I spun around. Old Samuel Pike stood by the stairs, the foreman from Thomas's crew. His face looked 20 years older than I remembered. His eyes were sunk deep, his hands shaking around a flask. "What did you say?" I asked. He nodded toward the floor. The river wasn't enough. It needed more. I didn't understand, not yet. He walked past me, slow, each step heavy like it hurt him to remember. This land was cursed before we built the mill, Ellie. Your husband knew that, thought he could tame it, use it. But that thing under there, it don't take orders. It takes flesh. My breath caught. You're saying Thomas knew? He bargained. Pike's voice broke. To keep the water flowing, the gears turning, said it was the price of progress. First the animals, then the strays, then he couldn't finish. The children, I whispered. He nodded once. We sealed the dye room to keep it in. We thought fire would end it, but fire feeds it. Heat wakes it, and you, damn you. You opened the door. I didn't move. I couldn't. The world tilted. I saw the loom in my mind, the threads spelling my name, the red marks on my wrist. It chose you. The floor groaned. We both froze. From the dye room below came a sound like breathing, slow, deep, wet. The air thickened, heavy with iron and smoke. Samuel's flask fell from his hand. He whispered too late. The boards split. Threads, glowing red and slick, burst upward, wrapping around his legs before I could scream. He shouted once, high and ragged, and the cords dragged him down. His body hit the floor hard, then vanished through the widening crack. I lunged forward, but more threads shot up, slashing across my arm. They were hot, burning like wire fresh from a forge. I stumbled back, clutching the wound, and saw them writhe, curling back into the hole like serpents returning to a nest. The room fell silent again, except for the whisper. A single voice rising from below. "Feed it, Eleanor, or it will come for all of Redbridge." I stared at the floor, at the spreading black stain, and knew the truth. The mill didn't just take lives. It stored them, wove them into its walls, its gears, its breath. Thomas hadn't died by accident. He'd been the last offering before the mill went hungry again, and now it wanted me. Night came early, the day-thick clouds rolling over Redbridge like bruises spreading under skin. By the time I reached my house, I couldn't tell if the trembling in my hands was from cold or fear. Every light in town flickered, as though the power lines themselves were breathing. The mill loomed behind me, silent now, patient, waiting. I sat by the window until dusk bled into dark. My wrist still burned where the thread had cut me, and the red line beneath the skin had grown, curling upward like a creeping vine. Every few minutes it pulsed, and when it did, I heard the faint hum of the looms carried through the fog. When the clock struck 9, the whisper came again. Not from the mill this time, from inside the house. "Eleanor," was Thomas's voice, low, soft, almost kind. I turned slowly. The reflection in the window wasn't mine. He stood behind me, pale, the shape of him flickering faintly, like a photograph left too long in the sun. His eyes glowed dull red, and threads dangled from his fingertips. "I tried to stop it," he said, "but it's older than we are, older than the river. It woke when the first wheel turned. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move." "You fed it," I whispered. "The children, the men, you did this." He didn't deny it. He only looked down at his hands, the threads, twitching like worms. "It promised me life," he said. "A future for us. But it never meant our life, Eleanor. It meant yours." The room grew darker, the corners swelling with shadow. He stepped closer, and I felt the cold of him, the kind that crawls under the skin, through the blood, into the bones. "You can end it," he said, "or you can feed it. But it's hungry now. And if you do nothing, it will take the whole town. Children first. Always the children." He raised a trembling hand and pointed toward the window. I followed his gaze. Across the fog, the mill's top window burned with that same red glow, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. Click, click, click. Pause. 3 beats. Always 3. How? I asked. "How do I stop it?" His mouth twitched something between a smile and a wound. "You know how?" And then he was gone. The house went still. Even the wind outside had stopped. For a long while, I just sat there, staring at the dark. When the lamp finally guttered out, I saw the reflection of the mill in the glass again. It was breathing. I could see the walls expand, contract, like lungs filling with smoke. By midnight, I'd made my choice. I packed a single box matches, kerosene, the old Bible, and Thomas's wedding ring. Then I walked down to the river. The fog was so thick, I couldn't see the far bank. The water murmured low, carrying the whispers of the looms. Every step closer to the mill made my pulse quicken. By the time I reached the door, the red light was spilling through the cracks, painting the fog like blood. Inside, the air shimmered with heat again. The threads were everywhere, snaking across the floor, curling up the walls, glowing with that awful living light. And in the center of the room, where Thomas's lantern had burned, something waited. It wasn't human anymore. A shape made of twisted iron and muscle, gears grinding within it like bones. Threads pulsed through its body, glowing red. When it spoke, the sound came from every loom at once. Feed it, and the town will live. I held the matchbox in one hand, the kerosene in the other. My whole body shook. "Can't kill a god," it whispered. "Maybe not," I said. "But I can starve one." I struck the match. The flame caught instantly, brighter than any lantern. I threw it at the base of the nearest loom. Fire leapt across the oily floor, devouring the threads. The creature screamed high and terrible, a sound that made the glass shatter in every window. The floor began to collapse.
Ow.
Flames raced up the walls, turning the air molten. I ran for the door, the heat at my back like hands pushing. Outside, rain poured, but it couldn't touch the fire. The mill burned from within, red and white and gold. From the hill, I watched until the roof gave in and the walls fell. The river boiled, the fog turned black, and then at last the sound stopped. The mill was gone. They say the fire burned for 3 days. I remember none of it, tonally waking in the church after it was all over. My skin blistered, my hair singed to ash at the ends. The pastor said they found me by the river, face down in the mud, breathing smoke but still alive. A miracle, he called it. I didn't tell him what I saw in the flames. Redbridge buried its dead that same week. The river turned black from the soot, and the air smelled of iron for months. The townsfolk rebuilt what they could, but no one went near the mill's remains. Not even the curious children. They said the ground was too hot even in winter. I tried to move on, sold the house, took a room at the edge of town. I told myself it was over, that I'd burned the hunger out of that cursed earth. But the dreams didn't stop. Every night I heard it the sound of the loom, steady, patient. Click, whir, click. 3 beats, pause, 3 again. Sometimes I woke with the smell of smoke in my hair, sometimes with ash under my nails. And sometimes I woke to find the red thread on my pillow, thin as silk, warm to the touch. The mark on my wrist never healed. It faded for a while, turned pale, then darkened again with the changing seasons. When the pain came, it wasn't sharp. It was dull, rhythmic, like a pulse that wasn't mine. A year passed before the first letters arrived, scrawled in shaky handwriting, unsigned. The mill is singing again. Another came a week later. The ground glows at night. By spring, half the town had left. Those who stayed spoke of whispers by the river, of lanterns burning beneath the water. Children began to vanish, again one by one, always near dusk. The pastor called it hysteria. The sheriff blamed vagrants. But I knew better. I'd seen what slept beneath Redbridge. And then one morning I saw him, Thomas, standing by the riverbank, his reflection rippling in the black water. His face looked almost kind again, whole. He lifted his hand, the same hand that had once worn the ring I threw into the flames, and smiled. "You kept your promise," he said. "You fed it?" I shook my head, stepping back, my breath freezing in my chest. "I burned it," I said. He laughed, a low, hollow sound that carried across the water. "Fire doesn't kill it, Ellie. Fire makes it grow." Behind him, the water began to glow. Red threads rose from the current, winding around his legs, up his arms, shimmering like veins in the dark. "It's part of you now," he said. "It always was." And then he was gone, swallowed by the river. I dropped to my knees and saw the reflection not of Thomas, but of the mill, whole again, standing tall, every window burning red. When I looked down at my hands, the skin was splitting. Fine red lines crawled from my wrists to my elbows, pulsing softly, weaving beneath the flesh. I tried to scream, but the air caught in my throat. The threads tightened, cutting deep, shaping patterns I almost recognized. Letters, Eleanor. The sound of looms rose from the earth, faint but growing. The river churned, glowing brighter, as if the fire I'd set had never gone out. I knew then that Redbridge was lost, that I was only the first stitch in a new pattern. The mill didn't die, just changed its name.